Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
Today is our third mentoring session, the third lesson. Today, our topic is preparing your LinkedIn and email profile infrastructure for your outreach campaigns and your outreach process. We'll talk about minimal setups, optimal setups, and the setups we see as examples of truly high quality, effective ones on the market. We'll talk about setting up and filling out LinkedIn profiles, setting up and warming up emails, and the rules and limits for outreach. We'll also talk about, well, what are the minimal, let's say, not minimal, but the basic limits that can be and what life hacks there are to increase them a little. So I think Zenyo will start with LinkedIn and I'll jump in a bit to add to it. And then we'll switch. I'll continue with emails and you'll jump in and add to it.
All right, well, let's start with the main question. How many accounts should you be working with? Actually, well, the answer, as always, is the more the better. But the absolute minimal setup is a minimum of 2 accounts. So, 2 accounts, we get this from the numbers that each account without premium can process. A warmed up normal account without premium can process about 500 connection requests per month. So, 2 accounts is 1,000 connection requests. So, accordingly, this is the absolute minimal setup that will allow you to test a hypothesis and within a month understand whether your theory is working or if you need to look for other approaches. So, this is the bare minimum setup. Let me make a point right away regarding the software development industry, service based IT companies, and so on. Your market is very, very saturated. So, you need to go in with high volume right away. I would recommend a minimum of 10 LinkedIn profiles, just so you can handle it at scale. Because, well, we'll talk about this again in the next lessons. But right now, the market is in a situation where body shopping and just some very strong personalization don't work. Everyone wins with reach, everyone wins with scale, everyone wins with their offer. And the principle that works here now is more like first come, first serve. Of course, this doesn't mean you don't need to do a very deep analysis, select the right audience, and formulate your proposal correctly. But in general, everything in IT now works on speed and scale. So here, the requirement for a minimal setup is many times higher.
Yes, I'll add here that it's precisely for testing hypotheses. Even in IT, well, we see real examples where our clients do testing on 4 or 5 LinkedIn accounts. That is specifically to test to find a niche somewhere, not to sell yet, but to get leads and understand what they're interested in. The very offer you launch to test your hypothesis, well, you can start with 4 or 5. You'll just be testing longer. So it might take, say, 2, 3, or 4 months to finally find the offer that works. With 10, it will be easier. But as soon as you find that offer that starts bringing you leads, scale up immediately. And it's also important, don't be afraid that you'll burn out your audience by messaging everyone from 10 LinkedIn accounts. First of all, there are many more businesses than you think, so it will take a very long time to burn through them. And secondly, there's always rotation. You wrote from one profile, we'll write from another with a different offer. It's not a problem. No one will remember it. Usually, no one remembers the names, especially when competition is high and there are tens and hundreds of businesses writing to other businesses every day. So, this is not a problem. But yes, for a highly competitive niche, scaling to at least 10 as quickly as possible is important. For example, our setup today is 14 LinkedIn accounts with sales navigators.
I'll immediately address the question we had in the chat regarding the quality, age, and so on, and the content of these profiles. Right now, it's a really big problem. LinkedIn is quite strict with new users, strict with existing users, and constantly sends people for verification. If you register a new profile, there's a 99% chance that you'll be subject to a document check within a week. LinkedIn has a lot of bugs with this, like documents not being accepted sometimes. And LinkedIn might say you've already used up all your attempts, even though you haven't done anything. You can deal with all of this, but you need to understand that you can't just start using new profiles for outreach. They need to be registered to real people because as soon as a profile is sent for document verification, if you don't have that person's documents, and accordingly, again, if the person isn't willing to provide you with those documents for verification, you can say goodbye to the profile. For the first month or two, you need to warm it up. That means gradually performing both incoming and outgoing actions. In short, a profile should ideally be at least 6 months old and have at least a couple hundred connections on it. Among the methods I know for creating profiles, which have been tested by our experience, is to create it and for at least a couple of months, work with it completely manually. And only after that, little by little, start using them for outreach. At this stage, that's probably all for the theory. Now let's move on to practice. I'll turn on my screen share and use my own profile to show you how to best fill it out so that it sells for you, so you can be found, so it increases your outreach conversion rate, and so on.
While you're turning that on, I'll probably say a bit more about the volumes. Yeah, about what numbers you can achieve. Because look, there are basically three main levels of LinkedIn profiles, which can be divided by the volume of tasks they perform. We're taking the warmed up profile specifically. So, in the first month, all these types of profiles, well, maybe not the first month, but the first 2 to 3 weeks for sure, all these types of profiles must operate in warm up mode and be warmed up. Any normal automation, including Grinfi, and Grinfi must have a warm up for LinkedIn profiles. If an automation doesn't have a warm up, that's bad. It's a negative trigger. It's better to look for one that does. So after we've done a 2 to 3 week warm up, what can we do? A LinkedIn profile without a premium subscription, properly filled out, as Xenia will show now, with from 300 contacts, at least 6 months old, can easily do 20 invites a day, 20 contact requests a day. It doesn't, well, it shouldn't, and it's better if it doesn't. Don't enable this trigger action of viewing other profiles. It makes no sense. It doesn't produce any results, but LinkedIn is very triggered by profile views. So we turn off profile views, 20 invites a day, about 20, maybe a maximum of 30 messages sent to first degree connections per day. And other limits, they are not as important, but they also stay within 20 to 25 actions per day. That includes likes, comments, endorsing skills, withdrawing invites that haven't been accepted within, say, 20 to 30 days. That's all within this range of 20 to 25 actions. Next is Business Premium. Business Premium is a basic subscription, a little higher than Career. Career doesn't matter for us. We need at least Business Premium. With Business Premium, we can already send 30 to 35 invites a day and around 50 to 60 messages to first degree connections. It's also advisable to turn off views. It's not a huge trigger, but well, they don't really provide conversions. So just always turn them off. In principle, they're never needed. And other actions, around 30 automated actions. These are likes, endorsements, and withdrawals. Next, Sales Navigator. Sales Navigator is, in principle, the top tier subscription. So right now we have 14 LinkedIn profiles, all on Sales Navigator. We can send from 40 to 50 invites a day. We watch to see where we'll hit the weekly limit, and there we decrease it. Where we don't hit it, we increase it. But overall, from 40 to 50 invites a day, from 70 to 100 messages a day, and 40 to 50 other actions. This is in principle the maximum limit. If you have a setup with 10 LinkedIn accounts with sales navigators, then you can calculate that in principle, you can send 8,000 invites a month. And that's already a very cool setup. You can test different hypotheses and do rotations between profiles. Well, that means there are many opportunities to increase your conversions. Okay, in principle, I've told you about the numbers. Let's move on to the profiles and continue.
Let's move on to the profiles. Well, accordingly, we'll analyze the profile as it is, how we access it, and how a person sees it. The three main blocks that a person sees first when they go to a profile are the graphic cover, the photo, and your headline. Let's start with the graphic cover. Accordingly, it should be in your corporate colors, according to the guideline, brand book, and so on. On this cover, you should have a brief and impactful slogan that clearly and effectively states what you do, how you can be useful, and what needs you solve. A very common mistake, I always emphasize this, is when people put a so called marketing slogan on the cover, like, we help businesses grow, or something like super cool. The problem with these slogans is that a person visits and doesn't understand what it's about. Super cool in the digital niche. The digital niche is broad. What do you do? Do you develop some products? Do you design? Do you do marketing? Or do you do something else? So it doesn't match. A person should go to your profile and immediately see what this profile is about and what you do. Next up is your photograph. So it should be a portrait shot. Well, of course, we're not talking about a studio photo shoot. If you don't have one, it's not required at all. Like mine, for example. It's just a photo from some street, I don't remember where, taken with a regular phone. But it must be a portrait format, and you should be looking straight into the camera. And if you like to smile, always smile. There should be no distracting backgrounds, sunglasses, headwear, and so on, anything that would cover your face. So, well, I'll even try now. If I have an incoming request, I'll show you. No, unfortunately, there's no incoming request. But when a person receives a connection request from you, they see your name, they see your photograph, and they see your headline. And so the photograph in this case plays a very crucial role because just by looking at this data, a person decides whether to accept your connection or not. And so your headline should also show the person how you can be useful to them. That is, whether it's a person with the same mindset, or you work in the same niche, or you're both entrepreneurs, or both C level. And you might have some common managerial touch points, or you participate in some communities, and so on. Therefore, your headline must also very clearly state who you are, how you can be useful, and what problem you solve. First of all, is the job title. Regarding job titles, that's a big topic in general. Which job titles can be used on profiles that you will connect to automation and use for outreach? And these should be head positions. That is, ideally, of course, it's the position of chief operating officer, chief commercial officer, chief executive officer, and the like. That is C level, it works best. Next come you can put various kinds of VPs or various kinds of heads of departments. But the key principle is that it must be a head profile because the people you're reaching out to, the decision makers, they also hold head positions. And for a hypothetical marketing director, it will be more interesting to have a chief operating officer in their network than some regular salesperson. That is, well, this decision is made based on the fact that this contact might be useful to me someday. They work more or less in related job duties. We will understand each other. But just some regular marketing manager or another mid level manager might not be as interesting to a C level executive. Accordingly, your requests with such positions may be declined more often, and therefore your conversion rate will drop. And the main point is you should never use job titles related to the sales department. So it's head of sales, CBDO, and, well, different variations of this abbreviation. A very popular position I'm seeing now is head of GTM, go to market, and things like that. Don't use it because, again, when a person sees your request, they see your job title, they see that you're in sales. Salespeople never add friends just for the sake of it. So it gives the impression that if they add you now, you'll start selling something right away. Okay, so I think I'm done with job titles. We figured it out. We don't use salesy titles because they can lower conversions. And the next part of our headline is directly about what we do, what our business is about, in which area we can be useful. What I see quite often in headlines, especially from our, let's say, colleagues from Asian countries, is that a person writes something like CEO of some marketing agency. And then after these vertical slashes, there's just a list of all possible skills they have, like marketing, SMM, targeting, phishing, I don't know, and something else. Just for all 320 characters that the headline allows, it's just a list of these skills. First of all, this format doesn't look professional. Well, we're all used to the idea that if a person is an expert, they're an expert in one thing. You can't be a super cool specialist on all fronts at once. You can't be a human octopus. So, first of all, it lowers people's trust in you. Secondly, again, it's a list of skills. If I look at it, well, okay, you know how to, I don't know, negotiate, you know how to do targeting and so on. But what's in it for me? I mean, I'm not hiring you. It might play a role if you're actually looking for a job and you're filling out your profile for a recruiter. But from a business communication perspective, you need to provide direct value and an understanding of what makes you special and how you can be useful. So, what are we talking about here? That our automation tool is secure, scalable, and a few more details. No detect integration plus proxy. So, it's an explanation of exactly how we are a secure tool. Okay, we're done with the three main blocks. The next block is if you have Sales Navigator, you can add a button like this to your profile. Book an appointment. LinkedIn offers several possible variations for this button. I think you can add a website or you can attach a link to your presentation or something similar. But I recommend using book an appointment specifically. Why? First, when a person opens a dialog box with you, this button will be displayed right in the dialog. If a person reads your message and gets interested, they can immediately, with one button, go to your Calendly and book a call. You won't have to send a link again. You won't have to play this ping pong with time slots. Like I'm available here, and I'm available on this day, and I'm available on that day. And what about this time? So you solve the problem of booking a call in literally 2 clicks.
I'll also add, Jen, that it's not just Sales Navigator. Business Premium also allows you to add this button. And from the actual analytics, I can see that of the meetings you see on your calendar, and I see both of our calendars, about 10% are scheduled through this button. So every 10th meeting is just someone who saw our message, silently saw the book an appointment button, clicked it, booked it, and that's it. We move on to the conversation. So the button really converts. I highly recommend it. And here's another life hack. If you sign up for a 1 month trial of Premium or Sales Navigator and then cancel it, the button might stick around for a while. LinkedIn doesn't remove it right away. Let's move on.
All right, let's move on. The next block is the About section. So, of course, LinkedIn intended it to be a block for an autobiography, a block for a personal summary. And again, if you're looking for a job and filling out your profile for a recruiter, that's okay. You can list your summary, your background, key skills, priorities, and so on. But again, we are now focusing on outbound. We are writing to a client to whom we need to sell something. Accordingly, every block, every section of our profile should explain to the client what exactly you do and how you are useful. And the client won't be interested in reading your biography here. That is, here they have the opportunity to find the information that they, for example, won't find in your short direct message or in other blocks of the profile. And it's in the About section. I recommend adding information that, well, of course, doesn't repeat the previous points, but it is, well, you could say, secondary. That is, these are not the key points that a person needs to know first and foremost, but it's some additional information that they can find themselves if they wish. Because again, everyone is used to seeing an autobiography in the About section. And if someone does scroll through the profile, they scroll straight to the Experience section. And this is where the main description of your company, of your business, should be. You don't need to talk about your responsibilities, your achievements, again, and so on. You are not filling out a resume. There should be text here about your business. You can write it from the perspective of the business, from the business's persona, to be more precise. It would be more correct to say. And what's more, the text that we use in the experience section, it can and should be the same for all the profiles you use for outreach, because this text is seen more often, and it simply affects familiarity. If a person sees this text on one profile, then on a second, a third, a fourth, they can already recognize it as something familiar. Well, and of course, if something is familiar to us, we develop a little more trust in it. And accordingly, the information that didn't fit here, we can add some details to our About section. LinkedIn allows you to pin up to 5 posts here in this scrollable block. Accordingly, the most key posts that prove your expertise, your social proof, show some case studies, pin up to 5 posts in this block. Okay, and we scroll down. So you can fill them out if you want, or you can ignore them. For example, I only have my education listed. My educational institution doesn't even have a page with a separate logo, so it's just a placeholder. And if you have volunteer experience, you can list that. If you have any specialized courses, specialized certificates, you can also list them here. I don't recommend adding courses or certificates that are not related to your professional activities. That is, let's say, you are currently involved in lead generation, but you have a certificate for completing some culinary courses. Courses on, I don't know, baking macarons. Well, obviously, this won't correlate with your current professional expertise, so you don't need certificates like that. But if you have something relevant, you can add. And the final thing is the skill section. So, yes, you enter your skills here, the key skills that you have. But here's a very interesting point. In the last stream, I promised to give a little insight that I've never shared before. So, When a person searches for you through the basic search, through this little window, LinkedIn also scans your key skills. That is, the ones that are hidden below it, well, it mostly ignores them. But it's the key skills, the two listed right here, that it reads. And if a person, for example, Google's lead generation provider, my profile will show up in the search results because I have that key skill. So you can take some time to think about how clients might Google you. Well, not Google, but search for you on LinkedIn, and then enter the parameters they would use to find you into your key skills. In that case, you'll be able to slightly increase your chances of appearing in search results.
Although, by the way, if we're going to be completely correct from an SEO perspective, then LinkedIn profiles do appear in Google search results. So, in fact, you can be Googled too, especially if they Google using a Boolean search, that is, specifying that they're searching LinkedIn, but through Google, then you'll also be in the search results. Even if they don't specify it, well, you'll just be somewhere further down, but you'll be in the results. And if you specify that it's a Boolean search on LinkedIn and we need, for example, lead generation experts, then Yevkin's profile will appear in Google search results immediately because it will pull him up based on that skill. And as I recall, at the top, there is also lead generation. So all these mentions on profiles, keywords, they are important.
Okay, well, in the final block. These are languages. Again, you don't have to fill them in. But for some, let's say, particularly meticulous lead generators who use very precise collection methods, having a specified language that you speak can also increase your chances of appearing in the results. For example, well, one of the methods that we use in certain situations is accordingly, we need to find people, Ukrainians, entrepreneurs abroad. How to filter them? Accordingly, the Ukrainian language is specified in the profile.
Yes, or a Ukrainian university. These are two great cases. You can do the same with any other country, specify the language or specify all the universities. So you just go through all the universities in that country, specify that these people must have studied at these universities, but conversely are not currently in that country. And it shows you everyone who studied there, but is now scattered across the world. It works great with Ukrainians, it works great with some small European countries. So this can be an interesting approach.
Now, from the point of view of your profile's security, what can be done to secure them a little more? The first point is endorsing your skills. Only your contacts can endorse your skills, especially if your profile is new. Ask your friends to send you a contact request and to endorse your skills. For LinkedIn, this looks a bit like social proof because, well, for a non existent profile that hasn't helped anyone or proven itself, logically, no one is going to endorse a skill. So if your skill has been endorsed, it's another proof that you are a real person. And in the same way, in the initial stages, to warm up the profile, you can ask your friends or your clients with whom you have a good relationship to leave a recommendation on your LinkedIn profile. Here's a little life hack. I've also mentioned it on podcasts many times. If you ask a client to leave a recommendation, even if they say, yes, I'll do it, in 90% of cases, they will put it off because they have to sit down, think about what to write, and so on and so forth. They have a lot of their own tasks. To simplify this process, you can just write the text of the review yourself, come with a request, show the text, and say that if everything is fine, just copy and paste it here in one or two clicks. Please publish the review. I will be very grateful. And accordingly, this serves as your social proof, and also another white flag that LinkedIn will see that a real person, again, is getting a real review. This means you are known, you are a real person, and you will get a little less attention. At this stage, that's all I have on filling out and managing LinkedIn profiles. Sash, and now I'll pass the floor to you.
I'll also add that the main reviews, specifically from clients, should be on the headliner profiles. So in our case, for example, in the case of our team, in general, the headliner profile is my profile. So most of the reviews are on it. On other profiles, you can even exchange reviews within the team, saying you're great colleagues. There is one headliner, which increases the level of social trust when people are looking for the company's founder, right? Well, usually it's the founder or some C level, the face that appears on podcasts, at client meetings, everywhere. That's the first thing. And second, people often ask during consultations whether it's necessary to publish content on all profiles. In general, content is a secondary matter. It doesn't generate leads in most fields. There are exceptions. There are fields where content starts generating leads in 6 months to a year, but that's still rare. So, first, content isn't that critical, but it is desirable. Well, it provides additional trust from both LinkedIn and your network. And second, again, in our example, we only publish content on our headliner profiles, which are my profile and Yevin's profile. And all the other profiles, we have 14 of them. So the other 12 profiles repost this content. They repost, sometimes they might comment, they like it, and so on. It appears in their activity feed as reposts. And it works. That's enough. Because first, Yevgen and I get the main volume of incoming requests and contacts from this useful content. And we manage our profiles more effectively there, right? And second, we collect a lot of reposts, a lot of likes, and so on, which increases the reach of this content. Because if you have a large setup of, say, 10, 12, 15 profiles, and you're going to publish content everywhere, you'll either lose quality or you'll publish a smaller amount. Well, neither one makes sense. So it's better to focus on one or two headliner profiles, put all the content there without losing quality, providing truly useful information for the audience, repost from others, and it'll work. That's all from that perspective.
And I'll quickly add something about content. The era of artificial intelligence has passed. We now see from our own practice, from client experience, and in professional communities, that content generated by artificial intelligence gets much, much less reach. What works now is expert content, without fluff, with value, written by a person. LinkedIn has most likely already learned to distinguish AI content, and it just drastically cuts its reach.
Yes, LinkedIn has bots now. So there's content from artificial intelligence, uninteresting content, content on what's it called? Various topics. Well, it's about what Xenia said. If a person writes that they are a marketer, sales, I don't know, a lead generator, a CRM master, a Star Wars fan, some other story. So they just threw in a bunch of stuff and write content in the same way. So that today I'll talk about marketing, tomorrow about sales, the day after tomorrow about recruiting, and then I'll also tell you how to make lasagna. Well, LinkedIn also cuts down on such content. LinkedIn now loves experts who operate within their narrow niche because this is exactly what is considered content that can be useful to the audience, which means it needs to be promoted. So you also need to focus on finding a niche, focus on a certain query, and move forward with content within the framework of that query.
Right, but I'll quickly add a little spoiler. On Sasha's profile, a post was recently published that had a link to a study by one of the Western LinkedIn experts. You can go there and take a look. We duplicated a few insights from this expert, but in fact, it's a pretty big study. He is tagged in our post. You can follow the link and get acquainted in detail with all the numbers, with all the algorithms that were figured out regarding LinkedIn and its attitude towards content.
Yes. Yes. By the way, I think there was a repost from your profile too, so you can find this content either on my profile or on Yevin's profile, and everything will be fine. So, regarding LinkedIn, it seems we've said everything. Now, let's briefly touch on email, because email, well, you don't need to fill it with so many materials and so on. The main thing with emails is to buy them correctly, set them up correctly, and warm them up correctly. First of all, what I'll say is if you are choosing where to invest in email or in LinkedIn and your lead generation budgets are limited, I recommend not touching email in the early stages, but starting with LinkedIn. Because LinkedIn, with a properly built process, in 90% of cases gives a conversion rate that is 10 times better than email. That is, where you need to send 1,000 LinkedIn invites, you need to send 10,000 emails for the very same result. Therefore, email is more complicated, email is slower, and email is more expensive in terms of infrastructure. Why? Because in terms of limits, email, just like LinkedIn, can send LinkedIn 20 to 30 invites a day, and for email, 20 to 30 emails a day. That is, one email address can send 20 to 30 messages a day to avoid ending up in spam for as long as possible. So the email infrastructure is more expensive in terms of investment versus results. So how do you build it anyway? First of all, the first mistake and what you shouldn't do is you can't just go and create, say, 30. Well, for example, I want to send 10,000 emails a month. 10,000 emails a month from the perspective that one email can send, say, 20 emails, right? And we calculate that it's somewhere around under 50. And so you take 50 email addresses, create them on one domain, and basically after a week, that domain no longer works. It's been marked as spam. And you shouldn't do that. So the infrastructure starts with you calculating based on the number of Desired emails you want to send, how many email addresses you need to buy and warm up.
Sorry to interrupt you. One quick thing. I'll go back even more to the basics. I'll say something that might be obvious to some, but since we're also watched by beginners and people who haven't gotten into lead generation yet, first and foremost, the biggest mistake is sending cold emails, doing cold outreach from your main domain. You absolutely must not do this. You need to buy domains that have a very similar name, but for example, the ending is not .com but .io or something similar. Because, well, with any outreach, no matter how well you warm up those emails, no matter how carefully you work, no matter what spin tax you use, no matter how you hide or remove tracking pixels, sooner or later, any domain used for cold outreach will get marked as spam and lose its rating. Can you get it back? Yes, you can, but it's very long, expensive, and painful. So, consequently, from your main domain, which is intended for your primary work, for communicating with clients, for system notifications, and things like that, you absolutely cannot do email outreach from it.
Well, first of all, we start by calculating how many emails we need. And we understand that for each domain that will have an email, and as you've again correctly noted, it shouldn't be your main domain. So when we were setting up emails for ourselves, we bought different domains with the calculation that we would put no more than two mailboxes on one domain. So if we need 50 mailboxes, we need 25 domains. If we need 30 mailboxes, we need 15 domains. This is to keep your email infrastructure from being marked as spam for as long as possible. And if an email suddenly gets your domain flagged for spam, you only lose two email accounts. Two emails are lost. You have 48 left. You buy two more on a different domain, get a new domain and new emails, and you keep going. So, two emails per domain, 20 emails sent per day from one email account. All domains should be unrelated to your main one. We're talking about cold outreach. We're not touching on marketing emails here. For purchasing all of this infrastructure, there are a lot of different services. I mean, you can just go on Google and search for, emails for cold outreach, and you'll find plenty of services that let you specifically pick domains that are similar to your own. Purchase them right there from them. Just buy them. They'll even create the emails for you. Then you export those emails into a CSV file and upload it to any email provider for sending, like Grinfi or some other tools. It doesn't matter. It's all done very, very simply and quickly. The only thing is, well, you have to purchase these domains. I mean, each domain has an annual subscription as usual. A very important step is warming up your emails before the main campaign begins. Again, many people in our audience know what a warm up is and how it works, but still, not everyone does. So I'll touch on it very briefly. A warm up is a process where there is a warm up provider that has tens and hundreds of thousands of emails. You upload yours, and they start exchanging messages. Ideally, you should already have your messages from your sequences written in there with all the spin tags in that whole story so that the warm up happens with your specific, not just your emails, but your messages too. That way, it works better, and the warm up on average lasts a minimum of 3 to 4 weeks, or even 5 to 6 weeks. After this, there are two diametrically opposed positions on the market. Some say that during the campaign itself, you should stop the warm up so it doesn't run. Others say that during the campaign, you should keep the warm up going so that the conversion rate is higher and there's less spamminess. I'm in favor of keeping the warm up running during the campaign, but slightly reducing its intensity. So, for example, if after a month of warming up, we've reached, say, 30 warm up emails a day, we reduce that to 15 and send 20 to 30 cold outreach emails. This way, the spam rating will be lower because the warm up emails always land in the inbox, in the important folder, and so on. As for the settings, what used to be configured, like MX records, other records, and so on, now, of course, the providers where you buy groups of domains and emails configure all the email records in the best possible way. They might not even give you access so that you don't break anything. So I won't get into the settings. It's better to use the services of a professional provider where you can buy it. But you have to understand that where you need 10 LinkedIn profiles to reach, for example, 5 or 8,000 contacts, right? You'll need to send 50 or 80,000 emails to get the same result. And I know of cases where lead gen agencies that work with emails risk getting their domains marked as spam, but they send 4 to 5 emails per lead to get a result. I have a specific case. I have an acquaintance who is currently buying a service from a lead gen agency for email outreach, and we calculated that he decided to buy only after the fifth email. The fifth email, in principle, most likely half of their domains had already been marked as spam that month, and they changed them. And with 5 emails per lead, you have to consider that the volume of email addresses that you need has to be very large because emails often don't get read. They often go to spam. People often forget about them. They often don't even look at them. It's a more difficult story. So, in short, that's everything about emails. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Yes, with the topic of messages and sequences. Bye bye, everyone. Bye, everyone.